We're just finishing up the Shema in the meditation and prayer course, which I'm just going to switch over to right now. Our ability to read Hebrew, to understand Hebrew, and to meditate in Hebrew. Right? So I'm just going to open my notes here. Switching over to that. We're finishing the Shema. If you have the prayer book, we're on page 42. If you don't have the prayer book, you can buy it from the shul, or you can find it right now at HebrewBooks.org. That's HebrewBooks.org/16091. That's 16091. And we're in the Shema. We're up to the following line. Let me just get my notes. We're up to the following line. Ukshartam le'ot al yadecha, and you shall bind them, you shall tie them as a sign upon your arm, and they shall be as a reminder between your eyes. So where we're up to right now is the word ot. Ukshartam le'ot, and you shall tie them as a sign upon your eyes. I don't have my Hebrew cards with me right here, they're in the other room. But the root of this word is ot, which is spelled with the aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and a taf, which is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph and taf, and it's got in the middle of vav. Right? So the aleph is a silent letter. The taf is the last letter in the alphabet with a little toe sticking out, the taf. And the vav in the middle is the very straight letter, just very simple, very straight letter. It's a V for very, right? V for very straight. Aleph, vav, taf spells the word ot. Now the word ot means a letter, but it also means a sign. It means a sign or a signal. There's a touching story of one of the 10 martyrs who were executed by the Romans for the sin of teaching Torah in public. And what the Romans did is that they took the sage, I forget his name exactly, Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion, I think it was his name. He was studying Torah, and they took the Torah scroll and they wrapped him in the Torah scroll. And they burnt him together with the Torah scroll. And the students of the sage approached him and they said, Rabbi, what do you see? And he says, I see the scroll burning, but otiyot porchot ba'avir, I see the letters soaring through the air. Such a powerful metaphor that he's describing. I see the parchment, the physical parchment of the Torah burning. This is while he's being burned alive, one of the 10 martyrs. We read about him during Yom Kippur in the afternoon service. Our idea of martyrs is not people that kill other people together with themselves. Our idea of a martyr is people that are killed for what they believe in without harming anybody else. Right? Not the distorted view of martyrs, which is tragically rampant in today's society and culture. So the sage said, I see the scroll burning, but the letters are soaring through the air. And the word of here for letters is otiyot. Otiyot porchot ba'avir. I'm just going to bring you an example of how the word ot is a letter. The letters are soaring through the air. Now, what's so beautiful about this, the metaphor, the meditation here is that they can burn our Torahs, they can burn our bodies, but they can't burn our souls, they can't burn our values. And that's what the letters flying through the air means. That, they're attacking us, they're hurting us, they're attacking our physical, but they can't destroy our spirit, which is our holiness, which is our impact on society, on civilization, on the universe. The letters are free. The letters are unchained. And that's what the beautiful meditation, what this sage was telling the students. Letters are letters of light. The Tanya teaches us that when God created the world, he did it through speech. And it was specifically through the speech in the Holy Tongue, in Hebrew. God creates the world through Hebrew. Let there be light was spoken in Hebrew, Yehi Or. Yehi or, let there be light. And the very letters Yehi or is what creates light. The letters Yabasha, land, is the letters that create the land. It was only much later, almost 2,000 years later, where other languages were introduced to the world. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story. There was, after the great flood of Noah, the people decided to rebel against God. And they built a tower, the Tower of Babel. I'd love to visit that one day. I imagine it's somewhere in Iraq. The remnants of the Tower of Babel. I believe there's some sort of remnant of this tower. So they built a tower going up to God, and they all spoke one language. They all spoke Hebrew for the first 2,000 years of the world. But God wanted to disperse them because they were rebelling against God. He didn't want to kill them because they were nice to each other. The generation of the flood was mean to each other, so God wanted to kill them. The generation of the flood were united. They were nice to each other. They were just mean to God. You're mean to God and you're nice to each other, God says, okay, I won't kill you, I'll just disperse you. Whereas the generation of the flood was mean to each other, they were nice to God. They didn't have a problem with God. They just had a problem with each other. So those are the ones that were killed. Think about what's more important to you regarding your kids. Would you rather your kids rebel against you or rebel against each other? What would a parent want? Do you want kids to fight each other or to fight you? It's an interesting thought. Right? If you have to choose one of those, most parents would choose, I'd rather my kids rebel against me and live in harmony with each other. And that's what God is doing over here. When he sees the generation of the flood, they're mean to each other, he destroys them. But the generation of the Tower of Babel are nice to each other, so he lets them live. He just disperses them. How does he disperse them? By inflicting them with languages. They suddenly started speaking different languages, and that is the origin of the various languages, and that's how they split apart. This one started talking Greek, this one Latin, this one Babylonian, and this one French and Spanish, and what happened was they didn't understand each other, so they just separated, and that's the origin of the languages. But for the first 2,000 years of the world, that story, by the way, is documented in the book of Genesis, in the second portion of Noah, at the end of the portion. But for the first 2,000 years, everybody spoke Hebrew. Hebrew is the language of creation. And Tanya explains to us that the very letters of an item's Hebrew name is the conduit through which it receives the divine light. You may call it the soul of that being. So the soul of the land is the letters Yabasha in Hebrew. The soul of light is the letters Or, Aleph, Vav, Resh, because the divine energy comes to them through those letters. The Hebrew name of everything is the conduit through which it receives its blessing. That's why your Hebrew name is so important. When somebody's sick, we make a blessing for them using their Hebrew name and their mother's Hebrew name, not their English name. Why? Why? Because it's your Hebrew name that is the conduit for your blessing. It's through your Hebrew name that you receive your nourishment. The flow of energy goes through your Hebrew name, like the Hebrew name of anything that exists, which was created through God's speech. So this is the power of letters. And now it makes sense why the word ot means not only a letter, but also a sign, a signal, or a miracle. Why would letters and miracle be the same word? You know, the Torah says, if a prophet shall arise amongst you, and he gives you an oat, a letter, or in this case, a miracle, gives you some sort of a sign or a miracle, but he tells you, leads you astray from God, don't believe in him. Don't believe in him. You're not allowed to believe in an apparent prophet who does miracles that leads you away from God, because this Torah will never be changed. If he tells you that God says that Shabbos is canceled, you don't have to keep kosher anymore, then you should not listen to that prophet. He's a heretic. The word ot means a miracle. Why does the word ot, which means a letter, also mean a miracle? Because the world was created through letters. Letters are the conduits, are the vehicles that make miracles happen. God creates the world through speech. Therefore, letters and miracles are the same word. And that's the meditation here. You'll notice in our shul, We have 22 windows in our shul, and each window has another Hebrew letter on the window. Artistic windows made with letters. Let me show you one of them. If you can see those windows, I see them so well, but I don't know if you can see them in this light. But maybe you can get a little glimpse of that window above me. That's letter Nun, I think. So the windows are with letters. Why do we have letters on the windows? Because when we built the shul, we had in mind this idea that God creates the world through speech, and the light flows through the letters. God's blessing flows through the Hebrew letters. So we thought that by making windows that are letters, Hebrew letters, we'll have this visual meditation of how the letters themselves are shining bright. When you look at the Hebrew language, you can think of the letters as shining, as illuminating, as filled with light, as opposed to another language, which is just a form of human communication. The Hebrew language is a medium for godly communication. That's how God speaks to us. That's how God creates us, through our Hebrew letters. If your name, my name is David Tzvi. So David Tzvi, those letters are shining. They give me my life. They give me my character. They give me my energy. Dalet Vav Dalet. That's why you should use your Hebrew name. Every time you use your Hebrew name, you're drawing upon those letters of light. It's a very powerful idea, which is why when you called up to the Torah, you're summoning your energy. If you never use your Hebrew name, it's like your energy is dormant. It's in a state of slumber, unconscious. But every time somebody calls your Hebrew name, you're summoning that energy. When you get called up to the Torah, which is the origin of your blessing, you use your Hebrew name because it connects you with your power source. It's like plugging your cell phone into the wall. You're pulling the energy straight from the source, and it goes through the letters of your Hebrew name. So that's why the analogy here, the metaphor, the visual meditation of our shul is having letters of light, where the windows are made out of letters, out of Hebrew letters, because the light shines through those letters. God blesses us. God builds us. God creates us. God makes miracles through the letters. When God speaks, things happen. As humans, when we speak, nothing seems to happen. But remember, we're created in the image of God. And just like God creates through his speech, we also create through our speech. Marty, I'm surprised you haven't pointed it out yet. But this is why we say abracadabra. I know you've really connected with this idea. Abracadabra sounds like mythical and fantastical and fairy tale. But abracadabra is actually Hebrew or Aramaic. Abra, I create. Kedabra, as I speak. I create through my speech. That's what abracadabra means. I create through my speech. Because we who are created in the image of God create through our speech. When we say something, something happens. We might not see it, but we've released an energy into the world. Sometimes it only becomes apparent on a more spiritual plane, like the famous story of the Baal Shem Tov, who overheard someone say to another person, I'll tear you up like a fish. So that the Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, closed his eyes with the students around him, and they were lifted to a higher plane where they saw this guy ripping the other guy up like a fish on a more spiritual plane. When you speak, as human beings, we're called Kabbalistically medaber, speakers, because we are the only beings in the universe that have been given the gift of speech, the godly gift of speech. No other creature has the gift of human speech, which is in the image of God. And just like God creates through his speech, so too we create through our speech. Again, it's not always tangible, but we've changed the world through our speech. Think about it. The pen is mightier than the sword. So letters are extremely powerful. God creates the world through letters. We receive our energy through letters, the letters of our name. And that's the reason why miracles in Hebrew is the same word as letters, ot. Otot moftim. So that's the meditation to the second word, this word, the first word we learned today, which is ot, aleph, vav, taf, which is letters and miracles all at the same time. So when you read this word, it says, and you shall tie them, talking about the tefillin, as a sign on your arm. Right? Why is it called a sign? Because when you see a miracle, it's a sign of something bigger. There's something bigger going on. When you see a miracle, you realize that God exists, that there's something amazing happening, right? So when you don't tie them as a letter on your arm, you tie them as a reminder or as a sign or as a miracle on your arm, because a sign is something which, like a miracle, indicates something else, something bigger, something greater that's going on. So that's the purpose of the tefillin in the verse, to remind you of God's governance. The tefillin that we lay every day is to remind you that God is with me, that God is creating me, the doctrine of perpetual creation. The words inside of the tefillin remind us of the Exodus, remind us of God's unity, God's oneness, that God is everything. And the tefillin serve as a reminder to something else, just like a miracle serves as a reminder to something else, to the existence of God. So to the tefillin serve as a reminder to remind us of the presence of God. And that's today's lesson. I'm going to wrap up over here. Today is Thursday, and I'd like to remind you that today at 2:45 we're going to be having a special YouTube Live and Facebook Live session, the Rabbi and the Rebbitzin, called AMA, which means Ask Me Anything. It's at 2:45 today on youtube.com/Jewish Gardens and facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. We'll be doing a live radio show, and we'll be taking any questions. So please send us any questions you may have to rabbi@jewishgardens.com. That's rabbi@jewishgardens.com. Or you can ask it live on YouTube and Facebook during the show. Hopefully we'll be able to get to it. And we hope that you'll join us there today at 2:45 p.m. With that, I want to thank Harvey Barnett for sponsoring this week of Torah study in honor of his Bar Mitzvah anniversary, 64 years. May you experience many years of health and happiness. So gesund. Harvey, we love you, we miss you, and wish you all the best. Should I take a look at some of these comments? Just happened to mention that to Judy last night. Thank you, Marty. I'm glad we're on the same page. Ed, I understand the concept of perpetual creation. I'm glad you connected with that idea. That's awesome. Gotcha. Why do we say that? Okay, we spoke about that. I think the gates of trust is important. As ultimate trust in God is important in your practice. It gives you reason to do the many prayers each day. Thank you, Ed, for that comment. I do appreciate it. And with that, how does the word nes differ from ot, Elaine? The word nes different from ot. So ot means a sign, as I've just explained, but the word nes means a banner, like a sign, like a banner that sticks out. So again, it's also very similar to the word ot, which is a sign. The word nes also means miracle. Both of them mean miracle. But nes is also something which sticks out. It's like a banner. You know, when you're marching army and you have a little flag on top of you, that is a nes, a banner. So again, it's something which helps us identify a group of people, or help us identify the presence of God when we see a miracle. So it's two different words giving a different angle on a similar but different angle to God's engagement with us. In fact, the word teva is nature. Teva means nature. I've spoken about it in an earlier class, how nature is the same word as drowning, because something which is drowned is hidden from the eye. When you experience a nes, something is sticking out like a sore thumb. It's a banner, it sticks out. It's the opposite of nature, which is drowning. A miracle is God revealing himself, apparently and obviously, conspicuously. So nes would speak about God being conspicuous, breaking the veil of nature. Ot is a sign. It's a very similar concept. And with that, folks, I'm going to sign off over here. Thank you for joining me this morning. It's been a pleasure. Over and out. Take care. Shalom.